and only 1 out of 2 of those sold, you're going to generate $144,000 in gross income, 3 times the amount. Now, if you can't get excited about that opportunity, if you don't believe that generating that kind of income could change your family's destiny for generations to come, you haven't even started to touch on it yet. Because, gang, out of these 24, could we say that 12 will buy from us again? We take 12 and we times it by 6. That's another 72. That's $216,000. That's now 4 times the national average of 2 people working. And what do we have to do each week before we did everything else? Say it, everybody, with me. 1 saleable listing. Say it.
1 saleable.
Right. And now let's just assume, because we're out in the marketplace, we're doing it, we just have 6 fall in our lap. 6 times 6 is 36. By the way, national average for realtors, 5 transactions a year. Check with the National Association of Realtors. Out of that 5, how many do you think just fall in their lap? 5. You with me? They're anticipating 5.9 million sales across North America this year. Okay, with approximately 1.2 million licensed realtors across North America, so do the math. Okay? Now, so now we're at 52? Now, let me just say this. Let me say it to you this way. Let me say it to you another way, because that way's not coming out. What if after all of Tim's research, that only half of what he found out about me is true? And instead of 252,000, that what I'm going to teach you, you would do no less than 125. How many would agree with me that's still a pretty good income? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, well, in order to do that, your #1 job priority, because you're the CEO, president, and chief bottle washer of your company, that means you set the job description from this day forward, no one else. And #1 on your job description, gang, has to be each week bring in 1 saleable listing. One last time, just humor me. 1 saleable listing. So, now, part 2 to the formula then. So the first part is 1 saleable listing. Part 2 is we must separate our lookers from the buyers. We're spending too much time with buyer or lookers and not enough time. See, we stay in touch with lookers, we work buyers. Now, if I could give you a formula, within 5 minutes you could tell whether someone was a looker or buyer. Would you want that, yes or no? Okay, write this down. There's 3 components that make up a buyer. The first component is they must have mucho dineros. Greenbacks, pesos, Canadian dollar. Call it what you want. Now, I know there's somebody in the room saying, well, there, that shows me with him. We can get people houses with no money down. Doesn't he know that? Well, guess what? I know that. It's been going on since 1920 or 1930. My father's first house. He got his uncle or his brother to borrow money from the credit union for the down payment. Are you with me? But the problem is, it takes a lot more what? And you have more fallouts. Am I right or wrong? So if you want to start making more what? In less what? And having more what? Because fallouts are not fun. Then what we need to do is we've got to start separating the looker from the buyer, and we need to start working with people with money. With money. Say it with me. Money's good. Right. They've got to have money. They've got to have motivation. I want to buy a house. Mark, I have $20,000 and I want to buy a house. Now, most people would say, that's fantastic. Let's go out looking at houses. But there's one other component that's missing. They've got to have urgency. I'm assuming credits with money. Okay? So money, motivation, and they've got to have urgency. Meaning not only, Mark, do I have the money, not only, Mark, I want to buy a house, I want to buy one when? Now. So the question then becomes, okay, well, where do we find people with money, motivation, and urgency? Come on, hotshot, tell us. Where do we find people with money, motivation, and urgency? I'll tell you exactly right now. You ready? Take this to the bank. Sell their house first. Okay? Now we're starting to build equity back in properties again. Am I right or wrong? Okay, but even when the market tanked, when I was down in Florida a couple of months back, I had people say, Mark, there's people that don't have any money out there. I said, what are you, crazy, man? Do you think that everybody in this country only bought a house in the last 7 years? Am I right or wrong? I said, think about this. My parents bought their house in '66 for $16,000. They had it paid off in about '88. Do they have equity in their house, yes or no? Yes. Can they float equity? Yes. So that, okay, so our house isn't worth $500 anymore, it's only worth $300. But the house I'm buying isn't worth $800 anymore, it's worth $500. So when it's not just one house drops, all houses drop. When they all go up, they all go what? All go back up. So it's not the whole world doesn't have equity. It's those people that bought in the last 7 years, but that's coming back. Or the ones that drew the equity out, which the house already paid them anyhow. So they got to have money, motivation, and urgency. The third component is you must get your buyer agency agreement signed. If they are not prepared to sign buyer agency, we don't work with them. We don't work with them, we don't work with them, we don't work with them. You either learn that rule here or learn it out on the street, but I will tell you that if you work with a buyer, sooner or later, if you don't get your agency signed, you will get one of these calls, usually Monday morning. We appreciate the last 9 weekends you showed us houses. But after you dropped us off yesterday, we were driving home and we went by this open house. And the agent said to us that he knew you and knew that you would want to have the perfect one and that this one wasn't going to be here because he had others coming back in an hour. So we just had to, I'm sorry, we'll refer you to everybody. Am I right or wrong? That's what buyer agency protects us from. I'll give you another example of this. I don't think I shared this with you or not already, but I had an aunt that came from this neck of the woods. She was an old maid. And anyhow, when she passed, she left me a 6-unit apartment building, and I thought, well, I was in town either now or in a couple of weeks from now. I'm not a real good out-of-state landlord, so I thought I'd list it with somebody. Anybody want the listing maybe before I leave? Anybody? Show me hands if you want it. Okay, well, because of my new friends and Tim and that, maybe it's not right I give it to just one of you. How about we'll do an open listing? You take your time and show it. Spend your gas to go over and put a sign up. How many want that now? Well, why not? The house will be more loyal than any buyer will be. You said it earlier, buyers are what? That house will do exactly, or that sixplex will do. It'll cover you from shelter and everything else, but yet nobody wants it. But yet realtors will put people in their car and drive them all around the city. What do you call people that put people in the back seat of their car and drive them all around the city? Call them real estate agents. It was kind of funny when my Aunt Mabel died. My mother was actually the executrix, which is kind of weird to call your mother an executrix. But anyhow, at the funeral, I was kind of upset. I said to my mother, I got along well with Mabel. I don't understand why I'm not one of the pallbearers. And my mother said, well, in the will, Mabel was very clear, Mark, that she was an old maid. She was very clear. She says men wouldn't take her out when she was living. So they sure ain't going to take her out now. Anyhow. So we got to make sure we bring in a listing each week, separate our lookers from the buyer, get our buyer agency signed, and here's the fourth point of the formula for success. Show and sell in-house inventory first. Write that down. Show your own listings and show Coldwell Banker Seacoast listings first. Hear me when I tell you this, gang, and please don't get mad at me. I train for every major real estate organization across North America. And I can tell you that if Relax is having a meeting today, they're not getting together saying, how can I make crystal money at Coldwell Banker?